Okay, so I've been in technology all my life, but up front, I'm not your typical tech guy. So when I am presented with a problem, I not only look at the problem and solve the problem, but I also look at the entire system that it's part of and fix that system. So about 2 years ago, Intuit came to me with a problem. They were having trouble keeping up with the demand for custom reports in their T-Sheets product, which is their time tracking platform. And I realized, hey, that's just a symptom. That's not actually the problem. So companies spend a lot of time and resources tracking time, tracking work. The reason they do it is they want insight. And the reason why they're asking for custom reports is they can't get the insight they need. That problem space is called project costing. And DAPT is a platform for solving project costing. Yeah, I just need to move that out of my way. So let me talk about our customers. So project-based businesses, as they grow, things get more and more complex. As you add more projects, it actually grows in complexity exponentially. And you get to the point where all the hand processing that you've been doing, spreadsheets and calling your accountants and things like that, it all just falls over and you can no longer keep track of it. When you reach that tipping point, the traditional answer is ERP. But ERPs themselves are extremely complex and they require an army of consultants. They take 6 months to a year to implement. They're very expensive. And at the end of it, it either fails completely or when you're done, your business is now shaped by the software model, not your own business. You spent 10 years getting to the point where you needed an ERP and you have to abandon all the tips and tricks and techniques that you've used to get to that point in order to use the ERP. So DAPT takes a different approach to this. And the answer actually is in a question about time tracking. Time tracking is used for something else other than tracking projects. It's used for payroll. We do this all the time. Hours go into payroll, we convert it to dollars, dollars go back into accounting. That's actually project cost. So what DAPT does is it inserts itself into that process and intelligently orchestrates and connects all of those platforms. Now we have access to the data and we can provide that insight. So one of the great things that's happened is because Intuit came to us first, they connected us to ADP. We have an early adopter pipeline, a very robust one. ADP sends leads to Intuit, Intuit sends those leads to us. We get 20 to 30 leads per month. We're converting about 20% of them. It takes almost no time for us to get a new client. So we're growing very, very well. We're getting that inside information. Intuit, they get valuable mid-market customers because Intuit's typical customer size is many fewer employees. Our customers are typically 50 to 150. Our largest is pushing 400. Our smallest actually has 5. ADP loves it because they're closing more deals. And we love it because we're getting all that insight, knowledge to build the platform out and provide the insight that they need. And the key, the thing that makes DAPT different is every company is unique. Each company has its own ways of paying its employees, incentivizing its employees. And on the flip side, they also have different ways of accounting for costs. They have different ways of assigning costs to projects. They have different ways of handling allocations and overhead and things of that nature. And DAPT is intelligent. DAPT is able to handle that and do so at an industrial scale. We built out a platform that has software components that we just plug and play, and each new customer, when we get a new unique capability, we add new components, we expand the platform. And the point of our fundraise is then to take that underlying technology and take it to the next level, start direct marketing to companies for the intelligence and the insight and things like that. But right now, we're getting customers. They're coming in. So I wanted to share some of our Some of our testimonials, by the way, I did not write these. I did not solicit these. I just said, hey, can you tell us what you thought? Betsy just sent that as an email, and I love it. Work of art. So let me talk about our revenue model currently. And again, currently what we're doing is we're orchestrating, facilitating the payroll process. This is not revenue from Insight and from all the other things that the platform will do. We get a $1,500 setup fee. We charge a monthly service fee of $249 to $499, depending on the size of the customer, number of employees. Our estimated customer lifespan, 3 years. We don't know yet. We've been in business for a year, but that's a pretty good estimate. And it's based upon the fact that if you've ever changed payroll providers and gotten it right, you never want to do it again. Some of the code.
There's no initial term of multiple years. It's month to month.
We have customers who are paying us annually, but we're not requesting. So that's how much they like our service, and we'll go to an annual model when it makes sense. But right now it's month to month. Does that answer?
For a specific indefinite period.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So what's your retention rate so far?
It's about 80%, but that's because many of our earlier customers have very complex requirements, and we had trouble meeting them in the first 6 months of our existence. So I'm being completely honest. Since January of 2021, so call it a year. And we have over 70 clients now. So we've been at it for a while. And you'll see later on when I talk about our revenue and our projections, many of our early customers, we charged a very large upfront and a very small monthly. So it's not part of our financial projections because our financial projections are based on our new business model, which is the monthly recurring. So this, I talked about this earlier. Again, the main channel that we have, DAPT orchestrates between QuickBooks, QuickBooks Time, and ADP. That's your accounting, your time tracking, and your payroll processor. We have customers on other platforms. We have Microsoft Dynamics, et cetera, et cetera. There's nothing about the platform that restricts us, so we will be agnostic. But right now, that's where the sweet spot is. So we're bringing in 4 to 6 customers a month. And in addition to that, we have a very close relationship with Intuit. They're actually paying us a $1,000 bounty for everyone that we convert. And they have helped build out the platform. So what I wanted to do is kind of talk about different sales channels. That's the Intuit sales channel. Different sales channels that we're raising funds to go after. The first one is ADP. We're in the process of getting listed on the ADP marketplace. It is specifically just for a Sage ADP connector. Again, using the same capabilities and technology. But once we're in the marketplace, we can use that connection for anything. The way that works is a rep will say, hey, use DAPT. They'll go on the platform, they'll log into DAPT, and we'll be connected. So it'll actually have less upfront complexity and cost compared to the other things that we're doing. And then, so you can see that the cost for customer acquisition goes down dramatically, and the time to close becomes immediate. The price that we pay is 25% affiliate rev share. The other sales channel that we're going to be exploring is now we're going out and marketing direct. Our next, one of our other targets is accounting firms, and this will be standard LinkedIn marketing. Very high touch, extended sales cycle, 3 to 6 months, but convert an accounting firm, you get more than one customer per firm. So we're figuring that the cost is much higher. It's about $2,700 to acquire a firm, but if we convert 3 to 5 customers, then our CAC comes down to $540 to $900. However, the time to close is 3 to 6 months. So that's a longer initiative. But in addition to that, we can also direct market to customers, to companies themselves. And we've identified 3 niche markets that actually need our services and are perfectly positioned in that kind of, as they grow, they hit that point where they can no longer keep up. The first one is interesting. It's digital services companies. So this is software developers, SEO companies, et cetera, et cetera. They're cobbling together a whole bunch of things to try and do exactly what we do for them. And so that's a great opportunity. In addition to that, the price point will probably be higher because they're used to more expensive things. The second one is government compliance. We are DCAA compliant out of the box because of the way we do things. Because the tricky thing from their perspective is the time tracking and the payroll is fairly straightforward, but it's accounting for those dollars properly when you put it back into the accounting system and having a complete trail of everything that happened, which DAPT has. The time tracking platform doesn't have it. The payroll platform doesn't have it. The accounting side doesn't have it. DAPT does because we intermediate all three of them. And we built the platform to begin with to be able to track everything. And the last one is grant reporting. We have 4 or 5 customers right now that are doing this. And there and actually one of our recent customers was an interesting one. If you think about grants, you want to account for everything to a grant. Well, that includes PTO, vacation and sick leave. So up till now, what we've been doing is fancy math to allocate that. Basically, we say, okay, during this 15-day period, you spend 20% on this and 80% on that. So we're going to take your vacation, spread it 80-20. The latest customer was like, no, we want them to be able to say, hey, I'm going to put 8 hours on the vacation on that grant and 5 hours on that. And we're facilitating that right now. So kind of an interesting little niche that we can go after. Here are our sales projections. Going back to what I said earlier, this is our monthly recurring model, which is why you see January, February, and March only 25 and 28 and 33 customers. That's the ones that are on the monthly recurring. All the rest that we have, the other 40 odd, are that earlier monthly model. Okay. And we're actually going to convert them to MRR in the near future when we're finished with the ADP integration. We're going to go back to them and say, hey, you know, we can automate that ADP stuff. Go ahead and switch to our monthly recurring model. The key number here to keep in mind is that 150 customers represents roughly $500,000 of ARR. This is just the first year. So this year, this is 2022. And our projections. Oops, let me go back one. There you go. Each one of those different colors represents our estimates of what those different channels will provide. And you can see that accounting firms are kind of later in the cycle, but growing faster. So taking, you know, kind of those estimates and projecting them out across 5 years, this is number of customers and then the revenue potential.
What type of accounting firm are you targeting?
Small regional.
Like a Grant Thornton?
Too big, probably. Yeah. There are gobs of these smaller firms that work with construction companies and things like that. They tend to do things very manually. We come in, we simplify for them. We provide the project costing that their customers are pushing for, and they can't, you know, they provide it, but they kind of only provide it. They don't really provide it well. We actually have some customers right now that are exactly in that sweet spot. So we know from them what they're experiencing and how to pitch them. And that's the great thing about our early customer acquisition is it's telling us exactly what they're concerned about and what language they use to describe things, which of course, if any of you have ever done digital marketing, is kind of the hallmark of launching successful digital marketing. Along with that background in tech over the last 30 years, my degree is in English, believe it or not. My graduate's in business. And I've done a lot of digital marketing, and I actually shared the hosting of a podcast called Digital Marketing Victory. So I'm all primed and ready to go with that part of it. And we're seeking funding. That's what it'll be used for.
Can I ask you something for clarification?
Sure.
Just for convenience or comparison, do you have any competitors, or did you model your business?
You're leading me. Well done. Yes, So honestly, we have lots of competitors, okay, but we're different from them. And we're different from them in two significant ways. One thing is we don't interrupt the growth flow. So as companies grow, they reach that point where they're like, if they adopt a Procore, if they adopt a Sage or a Uninet or a Coins, and actually one of our customers came on board before they had Coins, they're in the process of implementing Coins. It's going to take them a year to implement, and they're using me as a consultant to help them do it. Does that, that, and then the last style of competitor are the connectors, and Agave is the best example of that in our space doing connectors, but they don't have the intelligence. They're just connectors. And so basically they throw it back to the company to figure out how to use those connections. So really our advantage, our differentiator is that concept that you need intelligence. You need to be able to understand the business requirements, and building a flexible, powerful, generic enough engine to be able to handle all that complexity, but not have to rebuild over and over again. And that's our secret sauce.
Why would you continue to work with that client?
The Coins client?
Yeah.
Learn. And she thinks that we'll be needed even after they go to Coins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of it. She's sharing pricing. She's sharing.
You're not giving away the
secret sauce.
secret sauce.
On top of that, the secret sauce.
Be careful.
Yeah. No, I agree. No, I'm a receiver, not a giver in that relationship. Boy, that sounded strange. We'll just move on from there. Whoops. But anyhow, boy, all right. Don't visualize. Yeah, exactly. I gotta walk that back now. The key there is that
Well, you don't need to.
it gets back to the ERP thing. When you've built your platform to understand the data in a specific way based on your software model, you no longer have the flexibility to do what the customers actually need. Okay. And it's, it sounds simple, but it's actually fairly tricky to do that. Okay. So there are 325,000 US mid-sized project-based businesses. Construction and trades, digital marketing, and all those industries, et cetera, 20 to 500. So with an annual contract value of $3,500, that gets you a TAM of 1.1 billion. And this is derived from the bottom up, not the top down. So exit opportunities. Obviously, we have a very close relationship with the biggest players in the market. ADP has 25% of the payroll market, Intuit some ungodly amount of percentages of various different markets. So it makes DAPT very much an acquisition target, which potentially makes our exit shorter in time and higher in value. In addition to that, they will be looking to us for those strategic alignments that we have, the insider connections, the customer base. And if we are truly agnostic, it gives them entrees into things that they previously would be held out of.
But you wouldn't see an Oracle or a Workday or a Salesforce as a potential?
Yes, do. I just cited these two. Yeah, anybody who's playing in the space. And actually, I've talked to Oracle customers. Boy, what a nightmare.
They're lost to prove it.
Yep. Yeah, NetSuite also maybe?
No.
They're a little better. Yeah, so again, so fundamentally what we're talking about with DAPT is the transformation of the software industry, right? Everybody's gone to cloud-based, which means that companies, when they start with a cloud-based accounting system. They start with a cloud-based this and a cloud-based that. They want to keep going in that mode. They want to add additional services. They don't want to completely unearth everything and transform the company to match some sort of restrictive software model. So anyhow, yes. So the founder, me. For the last, it's about 10 years, I ran a company called FitterWeb Consulting. We were a custom software development shop. It's through that Intuit made the connection with me and came to me with the problem. Some of the clients that I had, so I specialized in working, we specialized in working with startup companies. And Instant Teams is the last one that I worked with. They just completed their 13 million Series A. When they came on board, it was a $40,000 contract 4 years ago. So demonstrated experience taking things from idea to true product to marketplace. I've been full-time with DAPT since launch in January 2021. Dan joined me at the beginning of the 2021. Actually, he and I worked together on some of the clients that I was working with in FitterWeb. He came on board. He is fearless when it comes to new customer relationships and new strategic partnerships, and he also helps with operations. In addition to that, we have great partners. So Danielle Price is essentially our patron at Intuit. Kathleen Booth, who I've known for a number of years, she is a well-known expert in digital marketing, and Elias Tadis is our man inside at AWS. He helps us with AWS pricing.
So those three folks aren't employees. They're
No, advisors. Yeah. We have a total of 8 employees. Most of them are developers at this point. We're currently seeking 1.25 million in a safe. Use of funds. I actually have project plans behind all this. So 35% in sales and marketing. Obviously, the big critical thing now is to expand this out, get beyond the partner channels that we have, because that's where the exponential growth is coming. We need funding to do that. 20% core development, 25% is R&D. Because we're at the core of things, we have strategic choices to make about whether or not we want to build our own. And one of those pieces is time tracking. Time tracking is abysmal. If you've ever used it, it's really miserable. So that's one of the strategic choices we're considering. And then 20% for key hires. And that's really staffing up the marketing and sales. Okay, just a highlight slide. This is historical. And then, thank you. And unlike everybody else, I don't have much more. I'm opening this to questions now.
Can you give us like an example or walkthrough?
Yeah, how do you figure out what the project costs are?
Yeah, so let's start at the beginning of the cycle, right? So in most companies, I could do this in the platform, but I'll just do it verbally. It's easier. In most companies, they start with the accounting system. So you get a new customer, you set them up, right? That information then synchronizes with your time tracking. So your employee goes out and it says, hey, I'm going and I'm working on this project and I'm doing this kind of work. And then there's usually other custom fields. All right. So then what DAPT does is it takes all that information and it holds on to it. And it pushes the hourly data into time tracking. Time tracking then converts that into dollars.
Payroll.
Correct. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm flustered. It must have been the earlier comment. So the time goes into payroll. Payroll converts time to dollars.
And then pushes that back to DAPT.
We take those dollars. So we use APIs to pull that information. We take those dollars because we already have that packet of loaded information based on the time tracking. We're able to then figure out what to do with those dollars. Right now, what we're doing is we're allocating it appropriately to the proper accounts, using the proper job, et cetera, et cetera. So very complex kind of making sure that it gets into the accounting system properly. Later on, we're going to be adding, and we have clients that are queued up for this. We're going to adding dashboards and insights directly from the DAPT platform.
So you have, you know, in a 50-person company, you might have dozens of projects going on.
Exactly.
So, and you've got hourly people, you have salary people.
Correct.
You have consultants.
Correct. 1099.
All sorts of people,
Yeah.
and are they all filling out timesheets? How are you collecting all this data?
Yeah, so that's the beauty. We don't have to do that because they're engaged with QuickBooks Time to do that. So we don't have to oversee that and support that. The company has made the choice to go to time tracking, and many companies are doing that.
So the company is loaded all their projects into whatever system they have, and they figure this out, and then they've got to make sure that the compliance is there. So everybody's writing all their time down
Correct.
accurately.
Yep.
And all of that. So that's also a big leap of faith. That's also a huge,
Yeah.
huge element.
Yeah.
It's a huge element.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
let's,
yeah.
let's be honest.
Our-
And
yeah.
then beyond the hourly stuff,
Yeah.
you have travel, materials,
Yep.
consultants,
Yep.
overhead,
Yep.
utilities,
Yep.
lawyers, consultants. And have you ever done a study where you've brought all the projects together
Uh-huh.
and then costed everything out and then matched it against the P&L for the month? Do they match?
That's essentially what we're doing.
No, have you done that?
Yes. So there's like 4 questions embedded in there.
I'm just saying, I'm amazed if you're doing that, because allocating all those overheads, because the base element are the hours, correct?
Right.
So that what happens is that if somebody's really, really, really efficient, and the project assumed that somebody was going to do it in 20 hours and they did it in 10 hours, you under allocate all the overhead. You under allocate. And if they end up doing it in 50 hours, you over allocate all the overhead. That's the way allocations work.
Yeah. Okay. So let's if it's all right, I'm gonna jump back. I'm gonna answer a bunch of different questions that were embedded in what you said. So the first thing is I'm gonna tackle time tracking. Okay. You're absolutely right. It's onerous. Nobody wants to do it. It's an overhead. Okay. How you implement it can either increase or decrease the overhead. Okay. How intelligent your system is at interpreting the data coming out of time tracking can reduce the overhead as well, the burden. Okay. In addition to that, that's why that's a line item in the R&D. I think that that industry is overdue for kind of a little bit of a push forward. And the answer is, things like voice check-in and check-out and stuff like that, which is possible. And I actually am working with a group on a side project to do stuff like that, biometrics, things like that. So we want to minimize that burden. Now, the great thing from DAPT's perspective is customers are coming to us already having made the decision that they're going to implement time tracking. So we're not burdened by that. They don't say, hey, DAPT, you got to help us get into time tracking. No, QB Time, you've got to help, or whichever platform they chose, ClockShark, what have you, you've got to help us get into time tracking. We're the benefit of it. Okay, so that's kind of the first. I hope that did that.
Yeah, I think there's a big compliance issue with that.
Yes,
Because
which
you're
is a
talking-
management
You're talking
problem.
about companies that are probably predominantly on QuickBooks, correct?
Correct. Yes.
So these are not sophisticated companies
Yes.
by and large.
Yes. Yes.
And,
Yes.
if they're able to just gather how many hours somebody worked
Yep.
for a week and get that right, they're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah. So there, what we should kind of bring to the table is what's happening right now. So there are companies out there still writing it down on a sheet of paper and handing it in. There are other companies where they're texting it in, and the accounting staff is going through the problem of entering it in. Okay, so yeah, there's a revolution going on in that as well. But more and more companies are not tolerant of that hand, and that's exactly what I talked about. They're breaking down because of that hand manual intervention.
But
Mhm.
think about, let's think
Can I
about.
interrupt?
Sure.
So basically what he's saying is garbage in, garbage out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But let's say, for example, and I don't want to monopolize this, and if this is an interesting.
We're into the very weeds now.
So let's say you have a company with 50 employees, and let's say there are just 2 projects in the whole thing.
Yep.
Okay. And one of them's real efficient, and it's going gangbusters, and it's basically under budget. And one's a dog, and it's over budget. Depending on how you set it up, one is going to over allocate. It's going to pull all this overhead and pull everything with it, and the other one is going to be under, depending on how you set up all the business rules.
Yeah,
And it sounded to me like the business rules are driven by the hours.
can be. So no, good point, because I was going to get to that next, because that's really the heart of the whole thing. The key to the whole thing is you need to be able to identify what costs are overhead versus non-overhead, and people have different categories of overhead, right? DAPT is sophisticated enough to let you choose which allocation algorithm you want to use. In addition to that, DAPT is intelligent enough, because of the way it processes the payroll, to be able to associate more of the cost directly to the work, because we're actually pulling the payroll at the part level. So we can, employer expenses are being pulled in as well, and things of that nature. So we're getting the total cost, not the estimated burden cost, okay? So it's fascinating to me. So you go to these companies, and they have these massive spreadsheets that they use to go, okay, my overhead cost is X, and not overhead cost. My labor cost is X across all of these people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to use an average rate for all those people, right? So now it ends up being $25. And you get into the exact same problem that you're talking about. I spent 10 hours, he spent 12 hours. We're both, $25 an hour, but I'm actually $50 an hour, and he's actually, $15 an hour, right? Because of the way DAPT is in the middle of all this, we can actually make that connection directly and allocate those costs correctly, okay?
You can allocate the person who's making $15 an hour versus the one that's making $50 an hour to the right project.
To the right number of hours on the right project. Now you keep pushing to the bigger.
Nobody else is doing that.
That's not true. Other people are doing it, but again, it's a huge compromise. You have to kind of give up your company to be able to do that.
But if somebody's twice as fast as somebody else, and you're going to capture that in an hourly thing or whatever, okay, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right, but the issue is, so the question underneath what you're trying to get at, I think, okay, is comparison, right? Because you're asking the bigger question, and that's the one that's missing, which is, hey, this project versus this project versus this project, which ones are doing well and why? And how do I replicate that? And more importantly, and this we're dealing with this with a company that does dry ice blasting. Did you know that such a thing exists? Instead of sandblasting, they use dry ice? This is cool. I love that. So what they're trying to do is they're saying, hey, we could go do dry ice blasting at refineries, or we could go do dry ice blasting at buildings. Which one is going to be more profitable for us? Which one is better? And I'm going to steer my sales, because they have an infinite sales channel, because they're new and unique and everybody wants it. So they're like, hey, I want to know which way to steer my sales, which is that kind of higher order question. So we've kind of gotten at two different questions. One is more traditional construction project management. Why is this project failing and this project doing well? Okay. And the other one is, how do I steer the business to gain the most profitable projects and to grow as fast as possible?
Well, I think it's hard just to figure out. That's a more sophisticated question, which ones are doing well versus ones that aren't.
Mhm.
I think it's hard to figure out what is
The first one, yeah.
just what it actually costs. I think that's hard.
Yeah.
Now, a good financial person can go down there and figure that out ad hoc, not on an ongoing basis. But these smaller companies that I'm going to say that are under 20 million, under even $50 million.
Yeah.
I'm just curious that they have the compliance skills and the knowledge skills
We're already,
to
yeah,
implement.
we're already able to take what we've learned from more sophisticated customers and use it to guide less sophisticated customers. And actually, I experienced that just 2 days ago. So with a company called Gaster Painting. And I'm walking her through. So they're switching from one payroll provider to another. They were doing very, very crude job costing at the other provider. I'm like, hey, you now have access to all this information. How do you want to handle it? Okay. And she was like, and I was like, all right, let me, with our typical customer, this is what we do. And I'm guiding her along those kind of more positive.
So another test would be, and this is my last comment.
Mark,
So go
Mark,
ahead.
there's a specific reason I asked you to be here.
So another test would be, so a small company, they're gonna have a sales budget and a finance budget
Yep.
and an operations budget and an engineering budget and maybe all those other kinds of things. If you made all of those a project, just de facto made those budgets a project and ran them through your system,
Yeah.
would they match your P and L at the end of the month? That's my question. Because if the allocations were perfect, it would match your P and L every month.
Correct. Yeah.
And my concern is that allocations are a very tricky business.
I think it would only match, if I understand what the tool can do, it would only balance to a certain categories with the P and L, like salaries and benefits. It's not, if I'm a construction company, is the reporting, I've got a project to build a house. Is this tool going to, in addition to, I have 2 projects to build 2 different houses.
Correct. Yeah.
Is this tool going to, I'm not going to say allocate, is this tool going to gather not only the labor, but all the materials and whatever else goes into building a house? Or is it simply, I don't say that negatively, or is it simply the hours?
It's the labor cost at this point. At this point, we're actually bidding on materials soon. So, but interestingly,
This is a labor project costing.
correct at this stage.
So I think that's really important to get across what that is, because it's a critical element to be managed. But I want to tell you, there's a lot of other stuff that can get out of control pretty quickly.
Yeah. The question that our customers are trying to answer is, at its simplest form, is I projected that this was going to cost $500,000. I'm 3 months in and this much time, and the managers are telling me this much. So I've used $250,000. Does that match with my projection? That's the simplest thing that they're trying to answer.
In labor costs.
Yeah, in labor costs, exactly. Yeah. And so we're answering that. And again, this is the foundation. The customers are coming to us and saying, okay, now add on this and add on this and add on this.
So
And it's the business model that matters at the end of the day, right?
there's a SaaS component, but there's also a consulting component.
There is currently. So
Your perfect dream at the end, will it all be automated?
yes, exactly.
So what
Exactly.
Mark is talking about training these people up front to create compliance or just accurate information. Attorneys do that where they track every 10 minutes.
Right.
Somebody in the
Those bastards.
Excuse me, the attorney, it's 6 minutes.
Is it now 6? Easily divisible by 10, right?
So, but you're basically saying you're gonna automate all that, so.
Yeah, we're going to be able to grow the business to the point where a self-service platform is possible.
And driven by AI?
It's going to be a combination of AI and self-selection, yeah. So there's guided decisioning that needs to happen.
So
But-
that guided, and this is the key piece,
Mhm.
the guided decision-making upfront is more of a consulting, because if I screw up at the beginning setting up,
Yeah.
it's like your accounting system. If you screw it up at the beginning, you're either screwed or you have to go back and hire someone to fix everything.
Right.
And you're still screwed. And
It becomes a value add consulting arm it becomes a spin-off business, basically.
but if you go through the accounting firms,
Mhm.
is that a value add to them? Because instead of you implementing that, they implement that.
Exactly.
And to them, that's a revenue source.
Exactly.
So you're driving them additional revenue.
And yeah,
Pardon me?
it's an easy
revenue source.
It's an
Well, it
easier.
depends on the accountant you hire and your accounting firm.
Well, use mine.
Well, in addition to that,
Do you agree with with your question? If the accounting firm has helped implementing it, then the compliance issues may go away.
I don't see a compliance issue.
You don't.
No. If you don't enter your hours, you're not getting paid.
Yeah.
Whether you're an hourly employee or a salary employee.
The company's
Well,
not
but you
getting
got,
paid,
but you
if
gotta
you're
put
on
them in the
salary-
right buckets.
so yeah. Right.
It depends. So, interrupt for a
Go for
I had new garage doors installed. And they came back 2 or 3 times for various things. When they leave a job, I get a text that say, we left this job, we're on the way to you. And they start tracking time at that point because they're driving from there to me.
Mhm.
And then how long they're there. And the minute they leave to go to another job, they've already automated that. And is that the time tracking you're
it.
talking
Yeah,
about?
that's time tracking. And yeah, time tracking's been doing that for quite a while. It's very, very straightforward. Yeah, so
What?
you can't have
Life,
yeah.
I was supervisor of R&D accounting. And
Were you a male or a female at that place?
and one of the hugest.
You can't ask those questions.
Well, he said, he believes in reincarnation as a former life.
You thought you were bad.
I'm out of it. I'm Bennett.
One of the biggest issues was getting people to fill in timesheets for the various projects they worked on. But they do, if they didn't do it,
They don't get paid.
whether they were
Yeah.
salaried or hourly, they weren't gonna get paid.
I actually disagree, because when you're salary and you don't put your time in, you just get complained about, but you still get your salary, so you still get your check.
Depends on the
Not if you
company.
have not if you have a trigger.
So the use case that we're kind of talking around is government contracting. And they have to report out accurate hour tracking to the government contractor, or else the company doesn't get paid. So for instance, you may have seen me back there arguing with one of my customers.
Oh.
They're not arguing, but reminding him that we set a certain deadline and he changed it, which is normal. We're good.
So we're pushing 7 o'clock
Yeah.
and we have one more presentation. I
Yeah.
don't want to be here till 9
Yeah.
o'clock.
Yeah,
or less.
Sorry.
Does anybody have other questions?
Hey, Malcolm, I have a question that has more to do with the investment vehicle than the company, if I may. So that safe vehicle is essentially a promise of future equity. And I understand the value of the relationship with Intuit and ADP, but is there a threat to the investor with the safe vehicle of one of those companies, rather than helping you exit, investing a bunch of money, taking a controlling interest in the company and diluting out somebody who's in the safe, since there's no actual value to the there's no actually monetary value in equity to the safe investment until there's a liquidity event.
Yeah, so we would not accept an investment from one of those partners pre-Series A. So I don't see that happening, but you ask an interesting question. Is that an answer?
It is. Thanks.
And-
That's just part of your business development vision, is that you wouldn't accept investment from one of those strategic partners prior to a Series A?
Correct, yeah. So we're pre-val now, and obviously the cap and all that. So it's not based on our financial projections, and obviously, it's future seeking and all that.
Yeah.
We will get to the point where we're positioned for a valuation round soon enough that I can't imagine an ADP or an Intuit taking it. And just so you know, we've had so I actually talked to Scott Cook for a while about 2 weeks ago, and I've talked to the Intuit Ventures arm. The Intuit Ventures arm is not going to invest in us anytime soon, meaning in the next 6 months or a year. They're looking for like $100 million investments right now because they're sitting on a boatload of cash. So we're way too small for that.
You're just starting to raise capital, correct?
Yeah, this is our first round.
So,
Everything up till now has been self-funded and friends and family.
so Rich, a couple of things. One, a safe is not set in stone, whether it's convertible note or safe.
Correct.
But, and then the other thing is, if we want to write the terms and help lead the round, we can do that and take that into account and put verbiage in there to handle that type of stuff.
Yeah, clawback cons or something, yes.
But,
All right, thank
but
you.
generally, the Intuits or any venture arm, they're not going to come in. If they came in early at this point and want to invest a bunch of money, more likely than not, they're going to buy you.
Yeah.
They're not going to invest.
Yeah, those.
No, I understand that's usually the case, but the old build it versus buy it, but they've already showed you that they want to buy it, not build it, because they're working with you already. So that was the only reason why I thought that was a potential threat, but
Yeah, so-
I appreciate your answer.
Yeah, so a minor clarification there. The work that we're doing with Intuit is through marketing agreements, not through investment. So the people who would be thinking about buying us out or investing in us have not been involved up till now. So
I understand. I understand.
Yeah, so it's a totally different type of arrangement.
One other quick question. Dave, who's on the call, he wanted to know, could any of the Deltek products, DELTEK products, be considered a competitor or a target for possible integration?
Both. And actually got a bid out right now for Deltek. They're on Deltek Vision. They're converting to Deltek Vantage Point. So I actually think that'll close in the next couple of weeks. So yes, again, we view our platform as agnostic. We're not trying to unseat whatever you've got. We're trying to give you that extra level of efficiency and insight. Yeah, so yes, absolutely.
Richard, Dave, any other questions?
No,
I'm good, thanks.
I don't know if you can see me. Yeah.
Yep. See you. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this end? Okay, thank you. Let's take a quick break.